So I've seen a lot of people's designs for multi-tiered farms trying to maximise the amount of these farm tiles that can give you a bonus to your single farm. And I thought I would have a crack at doing better. I've not seen anything get quite as much as this. This farm can get 900% output with no happiness bonus at all and just a single worker. The only real obstacles of making this is you need enough fertilizer to make the farm tiles, but that's going to be a problem for any farm. And you also need to research, obviously, the farm itself. And you also need intermediate logic to be able to get the grain out of it, but that's actually really easy to get early on now, so not a problem. I think probably the most important thing you can have at any point of your playthrough of Factory Town is a really worker efficient farm setup, as the farm's going to produce lots of the resources you need to keep your workers happy. And being able to do that without using up lots of your workers is really useful when you want to expand later. So I'm going to take you through how to build it and how it works as I go. So get yourself a flat space. We're going to need some water to supply water to the farm. I'm going to do this just by making it with the terrain tools. You can push W on the terrain tool menu to place water manually. That actually works outside of admin mode, but it isn't listed. Then I'm going to hit BBB to get the scaffold blocks and fill that up so we can build on top. So when we build our farm, you have to build it adjacent to the water. It can actually be over the water, or else it won't get water supply for some reason. So you would have to put it in this position. But we want our farm raised over the ground. Still has to be over the water though. So I'm going to build 3 scaffold blocks here, and then I'm going to build a little 3x3 platform that our farm can sit on. That way it's over the correct spot to get water. And at the moment it doesn't actually matter how high above the water you are, it will still auto-supply your farm with water. As you can see it's blue, so I've got water. Next up I need some ramps, so I'm going to start by building just the bottom level of the farm tiles. So those are the 2 easy ramps. Don't build like this, do not build a scaffold block underneath the ramp so that you can place it in the right place, because you can't delete this block underneath and we need all the space we can get. So what you want to do is build the blocks next to where the ramp will go, build the ramp against it, and then you can remove them and you get a floating block. So that's the ramps we need. Next up we can place the actual farm tiles themselves. You can see it's highlighted yellow, the valid places. It's not giving us a very large area. Obviously normally you'd get a whole area around the farm, but we've wasted a lot of space with this ramp. So the way it calculates what spaces are valid is it actually paths from the barn, which is why we need the ramp, so there's actually a path. So now I'm just going to copy what I've done and build it all the way around. Make sure you remove the scaffold blocks from the back. So you should end up with something that looks like this, and you can see I'm currently getting a plus 140 bonus. I'm going to destroy and rebuild the farm. This makes sure that the number there is up to date and correct. So we're just getting 140% from our little bottom level so far, but this one is extra small because of that big long ramp. We're going to get most of it from the next 2 levels. Make sure all of this looks right and you're getting that 140% before you move on, because it is really difficult to edit the lower layers after you've built over them. So the second layer starts level with the second ramp, so you can place your blocks next to it. I advise against using scaffold blocks because they block pathing. If you instead use arch blocks, which actually cost exactly the same amount, they won't block any pathing on the ramps. And we are going to build over the ramps. The pathing does need to work, or else it won't think those lower farm tiles are valid. So when we build this here, it shouldn't block the path because we used arch instead of scaffold. I'm going to use arch for the whole area just to make my life easier, so I don't have to work out which blocks should be scaffold, as there's no difference in cost. So I'm going to build out this first corner, show you where all the scaffolds, or should I say arches, need to go. We also need to stick in these extra ramps because it gives a more direct path. It actually extends the area we can use for farm blocks. You can see all of this space is valid. So now I'm going to work my way around and just copy this around. So you should end up with something that looks like this. And I'm going to destroy and rebuild my farm to make sure I haven't blocked any of the pathways down to the bottom. Make sure I still have that 140%, which I do. If you've had any problems, you've probably blocked a pathway somewhere or not placed a ramp. Have a check. And now I can spam down all of these farm tiles on the yellow squares. So we end up with a whopping 500% by the time we finish the second level. This is already a fair bit more than you would get from a normal 1 level farm because of those little extra spaces we've got at the bottom. We have lost some spaces to our ramps, but we actually get slightly more than that out of the ground level. You can see we've essentially blocked 4 spaces from each side with ramps that could have been farms if we had built this flat, but on the ground level we're actually getting 7 farm tiles, so that's 3 extra farm tiles per side, which gives us 12 whole extra tiles. So now we can get started on the final level. We need to build this high up, but there's no easy way of doing that, so I'm going to whack some scaffolds on the edge here, just tower up 2 blocks higher than my current highest level. And obviously when I build over onto here I'm using arches. I don't think you strictly have to at this point, but just for the sake of safety I'm going to use arches. So it starts off pretty similar to the lower level, but we can go an extra block over here and then we can ramp up on either side of it to get access to this level. And you can see here this block absolutely has to be an arch block because we're actually going to path to get to the lower level from that middle ramp and across, and it needs to have access to this level and the lowest level under that archway. Then we can proceed to just fill up this whole level with arches. And you should ultimately end up with something that looks like this. Check you've got all your ramps in. And then we're going to go ahead and once again delete our farm and replace it just to make sure we've not blocked out anything below. We should still have that 500% going strong. And that all being good, we can place down these farm tiles. So that looks good. Let's have a look. So we've got our 900%, which is what we were aiming for. However, we got a problem in that we've blocked out the space where you would normally be able to take output from the farm. This is why we've researched logic. I'm going to utilize a grabber in order to load from an input slot instead of an output slot. So I'm making a little bridge here. And on top of the bridge, I can place my chutes all the way along. And then the piece de resistance we can put in our little grabber from the logic category here. And it will immediately start pulling grain out really quick. So, probably want to ramp this down to the bottom, but it's up to you quite how you want to connect it up. Here's how I'm doing it. Gonna just whack some scaffolds in to make this ramp building easier. I don't like to leave blocks under my ramps even if I don't actually need the space, because you never know if you'll need it later. So I'm gonna do the side scaffold trick again and take all of these out. You can actually even make this one a ramp. Doesn't really matter how you do that as long as you don't actually go through the farm tiles. And then just for the purposes of testing, I'm going to slap down a void block on the end here. Obviously normally you'd want to be doing something with all of this, but let's just kill these so we can see the flow. It will back up a bit if it stops, so I'm just going to clear that with right click. And you can see it is coming out of there very fast. Look at that bar flashing. And we have that sweet 900% farm with no other bonuses except farm tiles, so I am very pleased with this design. I intend to use it a lot in my playthroughs. Just slapping another farm down just to make it absolutely sure we haven't broken anything, and you can see that 900%. Obviously you can get that higher with workers if you want to. I personally don't recommend doing that. You're going to end up with a much better worker to output efficiency if you just build a second one of these structures with one worker only. But just to demo that, I'm going to show you that this farm can actually reach a absolutely ridiculous plus 1000% with 5 workers in it and still a happiness bonus of 0. I tried at some length to try and get another layer above this, but I found that whatever spaces you end up taking up with ramps above end up just not giving you any more farms at the top by the time the pathing's done. So I do wonder if it's possible, but I can't find any way. So if you can come up with a way to get more than 900%, I would love to see it. You can see over here where I started doing the same thing with the forester, but it gets so confusing with all the trees clipping through each other. But maybe I'll do that. Do you guys want to see a maxed out forester? It'll obviously be a similar design, but there's a bigger radius, so you can make it much bigger. I wonder what the bonus you can get on a forester is. So what do you think? Is this the best you can do with a farm? Let me know below if you think there's anything I can do to improve, or if you think you can beat my 900. Also tell me, do you want to see a video on the forester, or shall I move on to other more interesting things?